Welcome back to the Artist Collective radio show. I'm your host, Shashana Pearson. It's been a bit of a hot minute since the last time I posted an interview, but I am so excited to get back into it today. I'm so excited for the guest that I have on. A long time friend, one of those great people you meet at a great time in your life, and it just stays with you for the rest of your days. Emil Rapstine is the singer, songwriter, frontman to the shoegaze rock band, the Angelus. He just released the third full-length album for the band called Why We Never Die. We talked today about rebirth, renewal, creating the legacy of your art. We talk about Emil's long walk to sobriety after years of drinking liquid courage in order to give him the confidence to perform his art. We talk about the catalyst that led to his change and movement towards sobriety. We talk about life after drinking, the tools that he's had to use to incorporate a new focus on his art. We talk about hope and responsibility of real life when we are trying to be creative and our creative obligations. And we talk about all of the things. So I'm glad that you've joined us. I guarantee you there is a reward for you if you watch all the way to the end that will not disappoint. And I'm so glad that you're here today to join us on this journey with Emil. Please like, subscribe, follow, comment, share with your friends. Any way that we can interact together as a community is something that I would love to do. So please feel free to reach out. Send me an email at artistcollectiveradioshow@gmail.com and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's go now to Emil, who I believe is joining us from the desert. Thanks again so much for joining me today on the Artist Collective radio show. Thank you so much for coming on to the show and joining me. It's good to see your face in the desert, in the middle of the desert here. Thanks for coming in all the way from Joshua Tree, is it?
That's right.
Okay, not really, but thank you so much, Emil, for joining me today on the Artist Collective radio show. It's good to see you. You've got a lot going on, and I am very excited to hear about all of the things. You've just released your third full-length album. Is that right?
That's right.
Why We Never Die?
That's right. Why We Never Die.
I'm excited to hear about how that came to be. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be. How did you get started? You're from a very tiny little town up in the panhandle of Texas.
That's right.
Tell me about that experience. Did you come from a creative family? Was music a part of your growing up? Is it something that you discovered yourself later on? Tell me a little bit about the evolution of tiny baby Emil.
Sure. Yeah, it was a really small town. It was about 1,200 people, I think, when I lived there. It's probably smaller now. Lots of farmers. My dad was a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer. My dad also worked as a principal, but in the summers he would farm for many years. And but yeah, we were in a small town, but my parents kind of created this little oasis, I think, for us that was not very typical of a small town. There were lots of herb gardens and vegetable gardens and flower gardens, and they definitely encouraged us creatively. I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and my older brother was always the writer. My oldest brother was always the writer. My older brother was always the musician, honestly. I did art, and my sister did dance. And back then I wasn't really interested in any kind of music, to be honest.
Interesting.
It didn't really capture me as much as just spending a time. I don't think I'd discovered that a way to kind of lose myself in music, and it seemed like it was very challenging. Drawing is something that I just kind of picked up in my spare time, and as a kid discovered. And my brother started taking music lessons. He took violin. He got into band, and they were like, "What instrument do you want to play? You could play anything." And I had to join the band for like a couple of years, and they were like, "Here, you play the tuba," or I played the baritone, and it's just this giant instrument that I had to, I walked home 5 blocks, and I had to carry this giant.
Through the snow?
Yes, through the snow. There was we actually got snow quite a bit up there, but
the panhandle tends to.
But I didn't want to play music in junior high. I wanted to do art, but they didn't even, a small school, they didn't even offer that until you were properly in high school, I think. So that was frustrating to me, and to add, insult to injury, I had to carry this giant brass instrument home. It wasn't a cool instrument, you can't be cool playing
it's yeah,
at that time anyway.
So what brought you to North Texas to go to school there? How did you find out about that particular school? Was it for their art program? And that's okay. And you went there you went to school at UNT for art?
For art, I studied graphic design there.
About starting the band, you were in Denton for quite a while. Had you graduated when you started the Angelus? You'd been in a few other bands. Colston Newcastle is one of them.
Yeah.
Tell me about the evolution of starting the band and how that came to
I briefly had a band when I first came to North Texas with one of my friends that I grew up with in the Panhandle, and we put out flyers we're starting a band and we're going to get some people, and we needed a drummer and we needed a bass player, and 2 people responded. I think actually 3 people responded to that flyer, but only 2 of them showed up for the tryouts, and they were both like, I can play bass or drums. And so we just kind of were like, you're in. And of course at the time it seemed like we spent so much time on that. I don't know how long that band lasted, but we did a few demos and stuff, and kind of put out a record, but it kind of folded shortly after that. And and in that band, me and my friend Matt Cheney, we kind of had that collaborative kind of songwriting approach. We would share songs with each other and add to them, and he was off doing his own thing, and I just started kind of writing songs, and not really having anyone to bounce them off of. And so I started playing as the Angelus, as a kind of solo acoustic type situation. And I was in art school, and we would have to memorize painting after painting, and there was this one painting that stuck out to me. It was called the Angelus, and it's it's these 2. It's not a cool painting necessarily, but it's kind of somber, and it's these 2 peasants out in the field, and their heads are bowed and they're in prayer, and something about it struck me, and I liked the way it sounded, so I decided to call the band the Angelus, and it evolved slowly, adding drums, adding my friend Justin Evans on drums. He was the first one to join, and then my friend Jimmy Barker and Jay Allen, then Casey Clark added another guitar, And so that was the big version of the Angelus, and that lasted for quite a while. And then most of those guys moved off, and but we kept it going. I even, for a short period, had Matt Cheney that I played with in Colston, Newcastle. He came back and played bass with me. And I guess since then, we've just kind of kept it stripped down to a 3-piece. And we've had a couple different bass players, but Justin and I we've been playing together, 20 years or so.
I can't believe it's been that long already.
Mm-hmm.
But so the Angelus, the painting is, I think it's beautiful. I have always loved it, even before there was a band, because it's I come from a long line of farmers too, and as you mentioned, and I think what was always essential is to the farmers that I grew up with or came from was that their gratitude for the rain, their gratitude for the blessing of the harvest. And that's what that painting kind of evokes to me, is just in all things to be grateful, even though you're working your fingers to the bone and there's just dry earth and whatever scraps you can pull from it, is to find that gratitude and appreciation for what you have. And one thing that I know about the band, your songwriting for the Angelus, is that there's a great deal of almost biblical references in it. You use the altar bells in some of your songs. I saw it described as pre-apocalyptic in one place. Tell me how your faith, or how you were raised, and the faith you raised Catholic, is that correct?
Right.
How that informs your music. Is it something that you do consciously, or it just is part of the process? Tell me a little bit about your faith and your art. And
yeah. So, I mean, I was raised Catholic. Like you said, we're out there on the Great Plains. When I saw that painting, visually, it looked very familiar to me. I was like, that looks like where I grew up. Obviously, there weren't people out there, working the field by hand. It was people in tractors and stuff. But it looked very familiar, and it looked very somber and kind of serene. But yeah, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I was an altar boy. We would have, I just remember certain times we would have these, we would use these, sorry, I'm blanking on what they're called now, but we would use these bells, and we would sing the Alleluia, and there would be no music. And I guess at the end of Lent, if I'm remembering it right. And then on Easter, they would bring back, they would sing the Alleluia, and they would sing it with the organ, and they would just have all these bells playing at once. And that really captured my imagination as a kid, that just long peal of bells. And it was just kind of a moment of, just kind of sublime reflection. And I don't know, I mean, I'll always, singing the hymns with my family, and I don't know who was picking them out for the missalette, but they always had a very somber vibe to them. They weren't necessarily happy, sometimes they were triumphant, but they were definitely kind of fell to the minor key a lot of times. And I mean, it has to have had a influence, right?
I often see it described as doom and gloom. Would you describe it that way?
It definitely has kind of a I guess I've always been drawn to things that are kind of melancholy. So it's not necessarily sad. But yeah, I mean, there are some themes that are doomy in there, but I
Doomy.
told her they're doomish, I guess. You know, I told my wife, I was like,
They're
she was like,
doom
is it?
adjacent.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're adjacent to a lot of things, but and it's hard to find your foothold of like what you are. And which, I mean, I don't necessarily want to be anything, but you have to tell people something. But yeah, I told my wife was like, so is it doom? You know, I talked to Kirsten and she was like, is this doom music? And I was like, it's, you know, it's silver lining doom. There's kind of a,
It's
I think there is a
joyful
hope.
doom.
Well, I mean, there's a hope beyond the darkness, right?
Right.
So I think that's
Definitely.
where it is. So there's dark themes, but a certain hopefulness, hopefully instilled in there.
I do want to talk a little bit about some of the struggles that you faced as
Sure.
a creative artist, musician, et al. You've been very public about drinking and being sober. Tell me a lot about that. Tell me what I know that in the Denton days we all were drinking. Is that what started it for you? Is that where it got out of hand? Tell me a little bit about where and why that drinking became such a thing in your life.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of that going on in Denton. Real easy to find that, and you know, I think the last place I lived in Denton, I could walk where I lived. I could walk any direction and end up at a bar, and I could walk. You know, didn't have to drive to the bar
or stumble to and from.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Same with me.
You know, I think you know, it was fun for a lot of years, and you know, kind of tied with that, you know, playing in a band, and you know, you get this instant gratification from playing a show. You're like, you get up there and you give it all your all, and you're like, was it amazing? They're like, oh, it was amazing. That was an amazing show. And you're like, oh yeah, let's do it again. When are we going to do it again? And you know, it was so gratifying. You know, I wish that I had found the tools or the people or you know, that's definitely part of playing in a band, right? You know, the live performance. But I wish I had, you know, looking back, my regret is that I wish I'd spent more time kind of honing that craft and learning how to capture it myself, at least for like kind of, you know, demo type purposes, you know, so I could listen to it and, you know, critique it. And I guess, you know, back then we were kind of looking for the next high, whether it be, you know, playing a show or going to a bar. And, you know, we have time, like you said, we have time for all that other stuff. And
the soberness of life, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, another part of it was that, you know, I grew up in a small town, kind of in a way, just, yeah, sheltered in our own little world. And I was very shy. And even coming to college, I was, you know, pretty painfully shy in a lot of ways. And, you know, alcohol helped a lot in getting past all that. And, you know, unfortunately, at a certain point, I think it kind of overtook that. Because there was a point where, you know, I was still doing the band stuff, and I was working in Dallas. I was driving back to Denton every day. And I think you've probably done that as well at some point, but, because you didn't want to give up on Denton, you were still in Denton. And that's just, that drive is just a beating in and of itself, and to have to work a whole day, or, work a whole day and then come back. But at a certain point, I've, the company that I worked for, basically shut down, and, I was back in Denton. I had some severance, and I had some unemployment after that. And I kind of was lost, career-wise beyond music. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I went to the bar a lot, and anytime I wanted to. And, they got to know me pretty well. I remember going to the bar one time, and I don't know if I had any money, but I definitely didn't spend any money. Just people bought me drinks. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
And, people were just like nice, and a little too nice maybe. But, that became a very like addictive type thing. And just, in a lot of ways, reflecting on that time over the years, I've been sober. I haven't had a drink in, I think, over 14 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so, I still think about that. I still reflect on that quite a bit. And, it always comes back to that kind of looking for that instant gratification, that instant relief that alcohol, that lightness of being, that it gave me.
Not being so tethered to.
Yeah. Just kind of, it was freeing,
Yeah. So what was the catalyst for the change?
Basically it all came to a head at a certain point. I was out of college, I was still living in Denton. I think I had just, what I'd, just described, that kind of being able to go out anytime, kind of ran that its full course. And I was like, I need to get another job. And also I was back commuting, and I had a good job, and things were coming back together. And then, I went to a party one weekend that a friend had, and it was like a graduation party with their family and at their parents' house, and nothing really that crazy, but there was tequila there was whiskey. I think I brought a bottle of whiskey. People were, really celebrating. And I just remember it just, things kind of deteriorating really fast. And at a certain point, like in that situation, I blacked out and don't remember anything except from what people have told me, and kind of caused some destruction to that house. And I think some of the people had left. They left me there. I must have gotten confused. I was trying to wake people up, and ended up kind of walking around the neighborhood trying to get into other people's houses. Kicked in someone's door, and then the police eventually tried to track me down. They found me like hiding under a bush or something at like an establishment down the street, and so it's real lucky that nothing worse happened.
Yeah.
I remember when I did get to go back and find my car, the door handle was ripped off of it. And I will say that I think the door handle was kind of broken anyway. but but I was obviously trying to get into my car and I couldn't. So,
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So, it was not pretty, but, after that, I was, I knew something had to happen.
Change. Yeah.
Yeah, something definitely had to change. And I can't say that I stopped drinking completely right then. It took me a couple months to be like, you can't drink it all.
To understand. Yeah.
And at that time, it was just like, it was trying to imagine something, doing something, giving something up forever.
Yeah.
As hard as it is now for me to imagine giving up playing music, back then it was that hard for me to imagine living without drinking. And then it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it's just addiction of the mind and the body. So, and, beyond just having a drink, it had several social implications, going to play music, creating music, band practice, going to watch bands, I was still in that whole environment. And, so, it took quite a bit of adjustment. And then I remember I'd agreed to play this solo show, and I felt I had such nerves and felt so shaky. And I just remember like being able to have a drink, that would solve all that.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't even care if you made a mistake. But it just was so intense. And I just remember sitting there like right before the show started and thinking like, if this is something, if playing music is something that you want to do, that I want to do, I have to find a way to be able to do it without drinking. And ultimately, if I can't play it or be part of it without drinking, then it's probably not something that I can do. And, that was kind of the turning point creatively, where I just kind of had to find other ways of kind of centering myself or relaxing before a show, or getting over those, it was, in a way, it was kind of like having stage fright again after years of being able to make that go away by having a couple of drinks before you play the show. So that was, quitting drinking was one thing, but being able to continue to be creative and perform on top of that was a whole other issue for me, and a whole other choice that I had to make.
So how did you make that choice? What tools did you use? How long did it take you to work through that? Because I feel really emotional hearing this story. I don't know if I've heard it from you directly. I've heard it, I don't know who I heard it from, but we have lots of close friends when even in times when we haven't necessarily been in each other's orbit. And I remember just being really scared hearing that story, and you telling me it. I feel very like I can feel again like you were so close, because since then I have had friends that have had similar experiences and it hasn't turned out quite so.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
Well, so it is a very fine line, and and just the idea that it could have gone very differently, and you could have even if it had gone the way it did, you could have still ignored the call to change, because I think that stage fright or those nerves or being just you with no veil of inebriation of any kind, anything to sort of make you come out of your own skin. Like, it just being you is terrifying for a lot of us. And I think if you had not found the courage to do that, we would be bereft of what you give us, you know, emotionally and musically, all of that. So I think that there's a lot of artists and musicians who protect themselves through other means, like alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. How did you get through that? And what tools did you use to get through that, to come out on the other side, to still show up in your art?
Yeah, I mean, something that comes to mind was kind of just, you know, I wasn't seeking out this information, but I would read interviews with musicians, you know, from different genres, and I would find out that they were sober. And, you know, this big star, to find out that they had been sober for, you know, 5 years, 10 years, was kind of a revelation to me. I was like, oh, it's possible. They seem to be enjoying life and doing well. And, you know, so that was definitely part of it. You know, I had lots of help just, you know, staying on track. I went to a lot of meetings, went to different, you know, some therapy at the beginning. And, you know, one of the first women that I talked to about it all, she was, you know, she just said that something to the effect of, you know, there's a pool, imagine a pool of water, and you're just touching it with your fingertip, and the ripples that radiate from that. And that can be the effect that, you know, your sobriety could have for other people. And, you know, it's totally been true that, you know, I don't feel like I've personally like guided anyone through their sobriety, but, you know, I know I've had several people who've contacted me and said that knowing that I was sober and seeing that I've maintained that has helped them with their own struggles. And, you know, after you get to a certain point, I think you also realize what you have to lose going back. And, you know, definitely now, with a family and with kids, and, you know, I would hate to falter there.
Your intention might not be to inspire others. I think that you do just by virtue of your life. So you have chosen to face the soberness, the somberness, the joy of life without medication, so to speak, without this thing that keeps you distant from the real feel. And since then, you have married a beautiful, intelligent, strong woman, and had, you know, these amazing children, and you have a good career, and you have music that you're still writing. So it is a success story, and it's just you showing up and you doing it and making these choices, these healthier choices. And I think I think for people that struggle and want those things and this thing, and, you know, I think it gives hope just that you've done it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, you know, I mean, talking about it now, obviously, like, it seems a lot easier, talking about it now and trying to compress all that time and struggle into a few words. But I think it's also I have to appreciate that. I have to reflect on that and appreciate and remember. That's why it's important to me to remember how long that I've been sober. It's really tricky on the brain, because even years after I stopped drinking, I would have dreams, and in the dreams I would be like at the bar or at the show, and I'd be like, well, I can have one drink, and then I would have the drink and I'd be fine, and I would wake up and I'd be like, it was very confusing, because I'd be like, can I? Even in my dreams, my brain was telling me that it was okay. Like, just you can have a beer. You would be fine. And, I know at heart, but that's not true. But those kind of, even though in, my waking life, I know that I can't have that. In my dreams, my brain is still trying to convince me.
Still longing. Still
Yeah.
longing for that. So does it get easier? Has it gotten easier?
Oh yeah.
Do you still have to like retrain your brain at times, or is it just, your brain is still coming to you in dreams telling you it's fine. One won't hurt you. It's fine.
Yeah. I've quit smoking, long ago too. I still held on to that for several years after I quit drinking. And thankfully I was able to kick that habit as well. But, I don't have those cravings anymore. I don't have that. I don't have that desire anymore at all, which is nice. And I'm really thankful for that. And, maybe thinking about it now, maybe part of that that whole fear of losing music in a way is, I think I depend upon that a lot for, getting those demons out, getting that darkness out, and finding the light. And, I think that is my tool for maintaining my cool and maintaining my balance. And I think maybe that fear of losing that eventually, where would my, if something else creative didn't kind of fill in that spot, where would that lead me? So maybe subconsciously, and I'm just realizing that now, that maybe that's why I fear the creative side so much.
Tell me a little bit about this newest album, Why We Never Die. Tell me about the theme of that. You described it on your website as it having themes of rebirth and renewal. Tell me what that means to you, the title of it, what it means to you. Tell me what you are going for with the themes of rebirth in this particular album.
Yeah, I think in the songwriting process, you're always trying to add something new, but you're always trying to, at least me personally, I'm trying to refine what I've done in the past, trying to build on it and refine, make it better. And so every album seems like, or every song seems like a re-chance, a new chance to kind of to be born again in a way through your art. And that's just kind of a theme that that I hung on to. I read this article that was called "Why We Never Die," and I think it was in the New York Times or something, and it had a lot, to do with a lot of the same themes about a kid asking, their dad what happens when they die, and I just started thinking about that, and I think that, sorry, collecting my thoughts real quick. I think I don't want to say that, this album will be, by any means will, be remembered by the ages necessarily, but it is something that some people could remember us by. And, even the artifacts like this, ultimately get washed away. But I think personally I'm not worried about dying necessarily, but I'm more worried about not being able to play music or not being able to create music as I get older. Just as time and responsibility kind of creeps in more and more. And I think a lot of people feel that as they get older, even people who aren't necessarily creative, that just maybe connected more with the music. They lose touch of that side of them. And I think creating new music, discovering new music is a kind of way to rejuvenate yourself, to reawaken your outlook on life. And so, it's not necessarily about truly dying or true immortality, but more of a metaphor, I guess. But it's at the same time, it's totally open and explores those themes as well.
Tell me more about your concern for not being able to play music as you get older because of responsibility and just aging out of it. What does that mean to you in a literal sense? Because that could mean one thing to me and a totally different thing to you. Okay. So tell me what you mean by that.
Have you ever heard anyone say something like, or someone asks like, are your songs like your kids or something like that? You heard
or anything, with your right.
It's like, do you consider, your creation like your kids? And I've thought about stuff like that, and I don't think they're like my kids, but it made me think, it's part of me. It's part of who I am and has been for a long time. And if a lot of my identity obviously is tied into that. So I guess there's a fear if that goes away, something that I consider part of me, wholly part of me. If that were to go away, then who am I? So I think it goes back to that whole kind of writing songs as an escape, as an identity, as just a habit and a part of your way of life. For that to go away, I see some people that I guess seemingly will let go of it so easily, and maybe there's some change that hasn't occurred to me yet that would make it easier for me to just to accept that, or to not care anymore. But as it stands now, I guess I feel like it's something that I'll hold on to for as long as I live. So and I'm not necessarily like, there's not a threat that's being posed to me right now where it's all of a sudden going to be taken away. But I just like to think, or I just often think about it. What would my life be without music or creating?
Has this been something that you've always thought about as you've done songwriting, or is this something that's happened as you've gotten older and you have gotten more responsibilities? Has it changed? Because I know you're a dad of two youngins. How has that influenced or informed or changed, if it has, your music, how you write, what you write, when you write, if you write? How has all of that, the real life responsibilities, affected your creative obligations, intentions, aspirations, whatever word fits?
Sure. I mean, just to flash back, I remember when I was probably in my, I don't know, maybe first or second year of college, I wrote my mom this letter and I was like, listen, all I want to do is play music. I don't know I have to go to school. I just want to make music. I mean, it's what makes me happy. And she was like, I get it, but you need to finish school. I'm glad that I did, of course, but it just, and I think I'm still writing that, like, all I want to do is music, but I have to do other stuff. And I mean, ultimately, I think having kids and having a family, having responsibility, it's not necessarily made it harder. It's just made those times when I want to work on that a little bit more focused. And I mean, honestly, like, I've never had as many ideas for music and creative ideas than I do now. And I'm 43. So, I mean, it's just like, there's not enough time. And I think that's another thing about kind of going back. I'm like, I look at all these different ideas that are important to me, and I'm just like, there's no way that that's all ever going to come to be. It's a good problem for an artist to have, but just the sheer amount of different ideas and projects that I have, it is frustrating sometimes to think that, if I didn't have all this responsibility, maybe I could work on it more, but I kind of have a feeling that that's not necessarily the way it would work out. I think a lot of that's just a reaction to having all these responsibilities. And if those went away, the kind of inspiration might also go away. So it's a balance. And, my kids are familiar with a lot of my songs, and they'll go around singing them, which is pretty flattering. They change a lot of the words, but
I mean, my kids will do that too with Tony's band. They'll walk around and starts, and I'm like, what is that? That's Dad's song, right? That's weird. And it's so, like, gratifying to see your children support something that you have been, not me, but something that you've been working for, or seeing. I don't know, it's this weird mind trip, I think, when the human creations start singing and reciting your artistic creations. I don't know, it's this weird metaphor or something like that. But I also remember when we were youthful and in Denton and like early 20s, and we were forward facing, as you do when you're 20, and the world we're going to fill the world with all this stuff someday. I'll get to this and I'll do this eventually. I'll do this and this and this. And then you get to this age and you're looking like, there's still forward looking, but there's also back looking, and you're like, wait a minute, the someday, like, was a few years ago and it didn't happen, and now I'm here and I still have all these things I need or want to do, and the time to do them, it feels short. I mean, even though we could literally live another lifetime, essentially we could live to be 90. it feels like those opportunities do shrink. And so I think it's a different perspective as far as the pressure to get all of you earthside, if you will. And in our 20s, we had time. We could just do whatever. It will come eventually. It doesn't matter if we're wasting away living the rock and roll life, because eventually it'll get there. And now you have these children and these responsibilities, and you're like, oh wait, I got to get it out before I run out of time. And I think that there's a lot of us in that situation, and so it's good that you are getting it out while you can.
I'm trying. Yeah, it's and I don't try to, like, I'm not always like, hey kids, come listen to my new song, tell me what you think. But they'll hear it in passing, or we'll listen to it every once in a while, and they'll hear me practicing or something, and they'll tell me which song is their favorite and stuff like that. It's cute, and it's a cool way to kind of connect with them. And they have a lot of questions, like, my daughter was like, do you have 2 jobs? Just the other day, she's like, do you have 2 jobs? And I was like, kind of, but one of them definitely pays more.
Yeah.
And the other one takes up a lot more time.
Right. A lot more energy and a lot more of everything. But I think it's good to show kids that dichotomy and balance of doing both, because a lot of us have to do both. Most of us have to do both,
Right.
Most of us can't do just one. So one other question that I have that's just sort of like rolling around in the back of my mind. Can you tell our viewers or listeners about the origins of the name Millennium?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure no one knows about that. But some people call me the Millennium. And I was given that name by our friend Jay Allen.
Of course.
I don't know if you knew that, but
I did not know that.
You remember when Jay and Josh Wright and a big group of us went to Europe, and we stayed in Prague for the turn of the century. And so there was lots of talk about the millennium. Right. And somehow during all that, there was a lot of drinking there, and we were in Prague. And at some point, I think Jay dubbed me the Millennium, and just combining my name with Millennium, and has really helped me with my ability to spell millennium. Something that I otherwise would not be able to do.
I just remember, it's probably one of the funniest moments of my life that just has always stayed with me. I guess we were at a party or something, and you just, like, in your quiet way, you just like came up, stood right next to me, and you were like whispering in my ear. I leaned in, and you just started rapping this song, and that's how I learned to call you a Millennium. I don't even know if I say it all the way right, but it was so like out of what I knew of you, and you're just like, oh. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Do you want to do it for me?
I think I'll do it more as recited as a poem than a rap.
Okay.
All the kids call me all the kids call me the Millennium. My brain runs faster than a Pentium. Process the data. Don't even ask me what's the matter. Everybody knows that my beats are fatter than an elephant sitting on a penny. The girls walk by, they say, "Hey, Emilini." Emilinium. Emilinium. Emilinium.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I figured you were trying to get me to do it, but
I
and you're
mean,
not
it
the only
was,
person. You're not the only
well,
person.
whatever. I mean, it's
It's
fine.
good. It's
It's
good.
good. It's good.
And it's unexpected.
It definitely was not what I was expecting you to tell me at that party or show or wherever we were.
It was important. I had to get that out,
And I'm glad you did. Very grateful. I'm very grateful that you were willing to sit and let me pick through your your story and your
Mhm.
life and all of the good and bad. And is there anything that you wanted to talk about, that you wanted to use this to talk about that we didn't cover?
No, I mean, I think we covered most things. I'm happy that the album is out, and even though things aren't quite, the world isn't quite completely opened up again, um, it's been good. People are still wanting music, and they're able to find it. So it's not like things have completely stopped. It's been a really kind of cool opportunity to have time to reach out further over the internet and um, find a newer audience. So
And you
and
have
hopefully,
vinyl pre-orders happening,
yeah, final
and you have
pre-orders will be happening in the next couple of days, and so it's kind of been a different process.
mm,
The whole, I don't know if you're familiar, but the whole vinyl world is kind of turned upside down right now, where
mm,
it's taking people like a year almost now
mm.
to get vinyl produced
Oh, I
because
didn't know
things are
that.
so, yeah.
You have a few shows. Did I see that announced today? You
Yeah,
have a few shows, solo
I
shows
have a
coming up.
few shows right now that I'm just doing some solo shows, and it's still kind of like an electric experience, but without drums and without a bass player. So I just want to do something, and then hopefully after that we can get back to doing the full band experience.
Yeah. Well, we're
Yeah,
looking forward to it. So glad that you are still doing it, still
yeah.
showing up and sharing your gift with all of us. Thank you all for tuning in to the show, watching it on YouTube, or listening to it on your favorite podcast. Please be sure to like and subscribe, follow, and share, comment. Feedback is great. Anything that helps us stay connected. We're so glad that you could join us today. Thank you, Emil, so much for joining us today on the Artist Collective Radio Show. And we will see you all next time.